Hola. Welcome to episode 68 of Word to Your Mama. Word to Your Mama, a podcast about a Latinx mama, that's me, and the lives of her amazing multicultural tribe. It's a celebration of diverse voices and shared experiences. And today we have Rolando Cruz. He is a community organizer and part of the Boyle Heights Bridge Runners. So let me just preface this by saying there's part in the beginning where I tear up and I have to collect myself because he said something so beautiful to his daughter when she is born. And it just, truth be told, some things went down that day before. And so when we touched upon that subject, it was, it hit something. And so as soon as he said it, I was tearing up, but I didn't have to talk, right? And then I collected myself. And then when we talked about it again, then I started tearing up and then I did it. So anyways, you'll hear that. But yeah, in this episode, we talk about how being an only child has impacted how he is a father, his fatherhood, how repping Boyle Heights in a big with the big audience, such as when he was in with Anthony Bourdain on Parts Unknown, and then recently Broken Bread with one of our faves, Chef Roy Choi, and Takeout with Lisa Ling. He explains that, contrary to popular belief and how he's listed, he is not co-founder of Boyle Heights Bridge Runners, but he talks about that journey and he talks about what exactly Boyle Heights Bridge Runners stand for and do. I ask him about where he gets his sense of community organizing and social justice. Where does he get that energy? Because he doesn't burn out. And we also talk about not being fair weather hip hop fans. Yeah, it's a great episode. He's a great soul. We had a great time with this convo during the episode and also after the episode, stuff that you don't get to hear. I'm just glad that we finally connected. And yeah, so before we get into the episode, I just want to make, soft announcement of the things I've been hinting at. And just to say that Word to Your Mama is now part of the Latina Podcast Network. Yes, it's a huge thing. I'm excited that we are doing this, and I feel like you grow as a community, with the tribe, and so I'll have more information as it becomes available. But yes. Latina Podcasting Network, and it's, I believe, 20 other shows. One is in Puerto Rico, I think one is in like Colombia or something like that, and it's, other diverse voices, and we're coming together as a community to push along, to get the word out, and also, hopefully work together to get the promo that other people, quote unquote, get, and that sometimes, we are overlooked. So, moving forward, I'm hoping it's a great relationship. But yeah, it's exciting news. And if you've noticed on the app, whatever you're listening to, if you look at the show image, you could see the logo for Latina Podcast Network. Yeah, so you're going to start seeing a little bit more rollout, a little bit more information on each episode. And yeah, we're real excited about that. So let's get into Rolando Cruz. And then after that, don't forget, stay for the Supernatural Bear. I have no idea what he's going to be doing. And then after that, little outro. So let's get into it.
Ritzy, it's nice to virtually meet.
I know. Amazing.
It's wild. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's Valentine's Day.
Happy
It
Valentine's Day.
is, the city of LA is incredibly happy
I
after
know,
the Super
right?
Bowl win. So, yeah, I think, I'm happy if people are happy is the best way I would describe it.
Are you big, do you celebrate, do you believe in Valentine's Day?
Oh, that's a great question. I would say, so I am the father of a 4-year-old. So
Super
I think the
cute.
way I look at it is like I celebrate anything that she would celebrate.
Yes.
With kids, you kind of love, you experience love on a such greater level.
Mm,
And I think for me, it's just like, she's like my little crime partner, my best friend, and it's just fun to soak it all in. So, would I like partake in it in the usual sense? I don't think, you know, uh, I wouldn't probably do that. I maybe might hit up a local street vendor and grab some flowers, just to, you know, show love to all of our loved ones.
yeah, yeah. Um, Valentine's Day, I think you're right. As a parent, you revisit or reclaim or re-engage in holidays. I don't know if that, if it's been like that for you, but like I could care less about Christmas. And, the only one I cared about was Halloween. But when, we had the supernatural bear, then it was like, oh, Christmas. Oh, let's
Yeah,
get a tree. Let's get the ornaments. Let's make, and then so I started get every year started getting into it. Valentine's Day though has never been a thing for me.
yeah,
Even pre, having being a mom. And I think the people that I dated before I was married and even when with Raga, it was like from jump I was like, I don't need the cards. I don't want to celebrate. But
yeah,
I think it was like a test. Do you
yeah.
know what I mean?
No, I think it's true, and it's and like unfortunately, like a lot of things, like even the root of it is sometimes it gets so heavily commercialized.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
um, I think you should celebrate love every day and as
Exactly.
much as you can, especially after the trenches that we've been having to navigate life, right? So it's like
Yes.
you just want to experience love on a greater level as much as you can with the people that you genuinely care about.
Yes, for sure. And speaking of you being a father to what I've seen via socials, a strong, independent, super cute little girl.
Yeah,
Um doing my due diligence because we know of each other the first time meeting and like virtually, and
right.
I feel like in the past couple of weeks, maybe month or so, we've been interacting a lot, and you've been introducing me to some Twitter Spaces, and I don't know, it's just been this awesome connection, and because I know you from Elisa, Lady Emish, that she's been on here twice. She was on the second episode, Nabi Productions Light, and then she was on with DJ Fat Trick because we talked about Heartbreak Monday radio. And so this, I had to like do a deeper dive and being an only child, how has that impacted you becoming a father and how did those experiences inform how you parent?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of it is rooted in um, one, like, knowing the responsibility of being like a father to a young girl, right? And knowing that like my actions and are going to heavily influence just kind of the way she experiences the world, I think are really meaningful. I grew up without a dad, and so um I think for me it's just like, I think of the day that she was born, right? Like my wife was getting attended to, and so she was still in the delivery room, and so the nurses had already just given me Luna, and so I'm holding her in this room, in this like waiting room, and it's just me and her, and and it was wild because like I told her I never knew the voice of my dad, but
Yeah.
you are going to know the voice. You're going to know my voice, and that was like, and I think that to me was like, and that whole week, of her being born was super transformational for me. um I drove my mom back home that night, and I asked her, I was like, do you remember when I was born? She was like, yeah. She was like, I was alone in,
Ugh,
you know, and she was like, and she pauses and she goes, no, I wasn't alone. It was me, God, and you. And,
yeah.
you know, and like prior to my daughter being born, I was like a rock. Like I've been involved in social justice. Like nothing would make me like cry, like nothing, right? Like I was just like, I'm ready for this. This is all of these things, like just, emotionally dead inside just because, just like you raise yourself in that manner to like, navigate like growing up, in tough neighborhoods. Um, After she was born, I like will cry and like feel everything. And so I think that that's kind of like been the biggest transformation as like for me, not just like being like an only child, but it's just like really, like allowing yourself to feel on a deeper level. And, so yeah, I think for me, it's just like, fatherhood has been really fun. I think, just knowing like, like you're just going to try to like raise this child to be a really great person in the world,
Yeah.
right? Like that's it. Like success will be whatever she chooses it to be. Allow it to be. I just want her to be happy and do good in the world, because like you can take a turn and not do good in the world, and we've seen folks do that, and yeah, it's been great. It's it just means that you just watch a lot of Bluey and a lot of stuff. I've been working from home for the last like 2 years since the pandemic, and those 2 years really have been me and my daughter at home. My
Mm.
wife has still been having to go to work because of the line of work that she does. So it's like a lot of these during the pandemic was just like you're just like, all right, well, this world is like the beginning of that dystopian comic book I've read. And now I have this like, 3-year-old with me. And it's just like, all right, honey, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but we're gonna thug this out together. And I think if anything, like the silver lining for me is just like my bond with my daughter is just like incredibly strong. And yeah, and we're attached at the hip.
Ugh, that's super cute. And do you feel that uh being having her being a parent and it makes me want to cry that you
I
know
hear you.
it's super cute. Um sorry. Is it healing? Is it kind of like
Mm,
are you able to I mean, have you even noticed? Because even if you haven't noticed that's what it's doing. It's
right.
healing your younger self you know.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very genuine way of sort of reshaping like things, and I think a lot of it is just like you re-examine the world and how you live in it, uh, and it really in many ways just made me appreciate like my mom so much more, right? Like I'm a child of an immigrant, right? Like my
Yeah.
mom, she was the first person from her family to come to this place. And you just think about how radical that is, right? Like it's like, I'm going to get up and leave everything I know, the language I know, the people I know, and go to this foreign place that I don't know anything of. And then you find yourself pregnant in this foreign place, raising a child on your own. Like, it just like made me appreciate my mom on such a deeper level. And, we grew up in Boyle Heights, and so I know a ton of friends that like, who are dead or in
Mm,
prison, and
mm.
or just dealing with like, that the trauma of just, being raised how we were raised, where we were raised. And so I just like, I just kind of consider myself like very fortunate, fortunate that I was raised by like just an incredible woman. And so I think like in many ways, like Luna was destined to be Luna, like she
Yeah.
was destined to be this daughter. My daughter has my mom's middle name.
Oh,
And so I think a lot of it is just like not only paying homage to her and her journey, but also allowing her to just like to celebrate and just like be, all of these things, right? Because young kids of color are often not allowed to just like be
yeah.
these entities, however they choose to be and manifest themselves in multiple ways. And so the short answer is, I think not only was like Luna born, but I think, yeah, in many ways, like I was reborn, right?
Exactly,
And
exactly.
so,
It's a gift. It's a
yeah,
true gift. And it's also great that you point that out, because we just had this conversation a couple of days ago with the previous guest, who's a really good friend of mine, Kano. He's a Chinese Ecuadorian from New York, and we were talking about some. Oh, they I have this thread with him and Shane and Sket, these art amazing artists. We text every day, and one of them had a picture holding the supernatural bear as a baby.
mm,
He's like he's gonna be 10 this year. And I was like, ooh, that's stressful. Just thinking about that year for me, it's traumatizing for me. I feel like I went through the trenches that first year of him, being born. And then we were talking, I was like, man, I was like, to I full respects to the women that I know that have multiple kids.
yeah,
And then we went further back to our, being him and I being child of immigrants as well, and being an adult and realizing the full extent, because you're in it, and being like, they did it with multiple kids, or,
right,
and by themselves with nothing, con lo mínimo.
yeah,
Right. And here we are with like being so blessed, and um breaking cycles, and
right.
and all these things, and it's so hard now. Like, I can't. The respect due, the respect realize is definitely true.
I do
S-
admire, like, to mention, you talk about, like, folks with multiple kids. Like, I call it, like, the two-parent swagger, right? Like, just because, like, you're like, I've seen friends of mine that have, their second child, and the way they operate, I was just like, yeah, like you figure, you got your first one, and now you already know how to navigate it, and like I grew up as an only child with no like siblings, so like like we're figuring this out, like, and so, yeah, like I think it is like you just admire folks that are just out there doing it, and and I think, credit to all folks, single moms or single dads out there just trying to navigate it, make the best that they do, the best that you can in a city that is inherently very challenging to put your best foot forward.
yeah, for sure. So you were born and raised in Boyle Heights, because I know you rep it super hard, and I'm gonna have links to the latest episodes that you're featured in. I got a chance to watch the season 1, episode 5, Takeout with Lisa Ling, with you on there, and then also I'll have a link to season 2, episode 3, Broken Bread, with our man, the real one, Roy Choi, Chef
Right.
Roy Choi, and it's called Food as Resistance. So, I was like, man, he's repping hard for Boyle Heights, and then you're also co-founder of Boyle Heights Bridge Runner. That's how the connection comes through.
Yeah, I
Um,
will say this. Because it always cracks me up. Like, I am not actually a co-founder of the Bridge
oh,
Runners.
but they have you listed like that.
I know, which is, and so, like, I think one of two things. It's like, one, like, the crew was founded by, a collective of really great people,
Okay.
Nico, Myra, Gomez, Elisa, really were the kind of the folks that really got it kicked off. I kind of joined the crew a couple of months afterwards. But the other part is, like, we've never really used the labels in that sense,
Ah,
right? Like, we've never used, like, this person is the captain, co-captain, lead, none of that stuff. I think a lot of it has always been to kind of create it organically. So I do crack up when I saw it. I was like, well, that's not, true. And I think anytime, people are trying to, share stories, like, things like kind of come up, but I always I always try to give credit to, the cohort that originally kicked off this stuff, because they are all people that I have known for a long time, and I've had just endless love for. And I, in many ways, have just found myself in a space to be able to continue to support the vision of what the crew has done, and then also highlighting, to your point, like highlighting, Boyle Heights. And I think it's not only a place that I grew up in. And I've also seen sort of like the best of the community and also the
mhm.
worst of the community, right? And and by worse, I mean like, the development and people that are wanting to monetize the community. So I love the neighborhood, and the Bridge Runners is just like, uh, I think something, it's kind of our love letter to the community to be able to enjoy and celebrate the spaces.
I love that. And then, so if you want to tell a little bit more about that organization, and then we'll go into how you got into community organizing. But I, I know, Lisa is like, mi hermana amiga, but
Yeah,
I don't, we don't talk about what this organization really is. Like, sometimes we'll be texting, she's like, oh, sorry, I was running on
yeah.
Wednesday. And so that's the kind of the extent. I mean, then we saw, when you guys were on Anthony Bourdain and stuff. So what is the mission of the Boyle Heights Bridge Runners?
Yeah. So, Gomez, Lisa, and Myra and Nico, were kind of inspired by Gomez, who at the time was running with another group out in Pasadena. And he was just, wanting to get fit. And a big part of it was just like, why do I have to drive outside of the community to
Mm.
go partake in these like physical activities? We have an amazing backdrop. We have the bridges and all of this stuff. And so he starts to kind of like corral folks to be like, hey, come out and run on Wednesday. And he was like, you should do it. And at the time I was not a runner. I had been doing Muay Thai for a long time and really enjoying myself in that. And I was still in that space. I was like, nah, man, like that, like the cardio stuff is not really my thing. Da da da. Uh, but I also just loved being around them. I loved
Mm.
being around Elisa Gomez and that whole crew. And so then they were just like, come out one night. And I was like, all right. And like literally like all the classic things, like I showed up in shoes that are not like the best for running and like basketball shorts. And you think like, all right, 1 mile is not that bad. And then you're running it and you're like, oh man, this really sucks. Um, we got 2 more miles to do. And then, and so like little by little, he was just like, hey, do you want to come out? And I was like, yeah. And there was nights that like, I remember people asked me like, what was your favorite night running? And it was literally the one night that like, it was raining that night, that Wednesday night. And prior to it, Gomez was like, hey, are you going to come out? And I was like, well, are you going to come out? And he was like, well, I'll do it if you do it. And I was like, all right. And it was just the two of us. And he and I ran that Wednesday night in the rain. It was phenomenal. And it is by far my favorite memory of of running in the group. And this is, in the early years. And little by little, life happens. Folks like move on into different projects or different phases of their life. And suddenly like Gomez is just like, hey, do you mind, no pun intended, running with this stuff, and just like, and all of it is consistency, right? Is creating a space for folks to, feel empowered to come out at night. Number two, creating a safe space for people to enjoy your neighborhood, right?
Mm.
Like often we just like commute from work home, you go inside and you never really get out, and so really kind of like, challenging folks like, come on out. And I think a big part of our presence has been that social media presence. So you see folks that look like you, right? Like we are not like this heavily stylized running crew, right? Where it's all like, where it's like clearly like very like, professional photos and all of that stuff. It's the faces of the community that have come out, and it is by far a labor of love. And we've seen folks that are not athletic, that or view themselves as not as athletic, but actually are.
Mm.
And so we have, the gentleman who's a butcher by day, and there's the teacher that comes out, the local students, folks from the transgender community, the gay community, and folks that have been in the community for a long time that will come out. And so we see people like come in, pop out, people that do it consistently. And I think at the end of the day, like running is the thing that gets people out, but community is what gets people to continue to come back, right?
Yeah.
And that sense of community, I think, has been highlighted even, during the pandemic, how much, like, even though we took that pause during the pandemic, we did it again earlier this year. people miss that sense of community and that sense of community pride, and it's been one of the coolest things to sort of see like flourish.
Yeah. Do you have to live in Boyle Heights to be part of the Boyle Heights Bridge Runner?
It's a good question. The answer is no. What I found to be really neat is that we have folks coming out from all over: Pomona,
Nice.
San Dimas, Downey, South Central, HP,
Oh, nice.
Monterey Park, downtown, and so you have folks coming from all over, folks that have ties to the community and folks that don't have ties to the community, but just are looking for a place, to, kind of connect. And so I think the beauty of this has been to do this alongside Elisa and Lizette, and, to kind of just create this environment where it's not about like, oh, let me see if I'm really fast and I can beat
Yeah.
Ritzy, right? But it's more about like, I want to know Ritzy. I want to know, these folks that are coming out, and you see all of these beautiful like partnerships that come out, and friendships that develop. People that lived literally a couple of blocks away from each other suddenly now get to meet. One of my favorite moments is hearing how my friend Armando met with Lizette, and they both had followed each other on social media, would take pictures of the similar things. And then it was at the Bridge Runners that they actually physically met, and they were like, oh, like I've followed and seen the work that you've done, but now this is a space that we get to like connect. And so, I think that seeing the level of community that is created from it has been really fascinating. Our kind of new experienced fame has really been wild to sort of see, just because that was never the intention, right?
Yeah.
The Anthony Bourdain episode that you mentioned earlier was really is a testament to that. I think Roy, the homie Roy, is really kind of what got that ball rolling. He and Tony had a long-standing friendship, and they had been talking about things that are taking place in Los Angeles. And Roy's like, "Hey, you should check out this group out in Boyle Heights. They run at night. Folks of color. It's really neat." And sure enough, his people reached out to us. We chopped it up, and they were like, "Sounds good. We'll cut you guys into the episode." It was a cool moment, especially like I always sort of say like. My wife and I would watch the show regularly, all the time, and mostly because like this was the only show that she and I would watch that like we could watch together, because like most of the time like I was watching just really depressing stuff. And so suddenly to find ourselves in this moment where I was like, wow, I get to meet this like amazing person, and had a phenomenal conversation with him over food and tacos. But after that shoot, he just kind of sat on the curb, popped open a beer, and we like talked for like an hour about MMA and boxing and all of this stuff. And so that, I think, for that to me is like my everlasting memory with him. Wasn't like the stuff on camera, right? But it's always the stuff off camera that is really transformational. And I think a lot of it, one was just like our conversation about MMA wasn't just like like, oh, this guy hit him really hard. It was like actually talking about the nuances of the beauty about mixed martial arts, and so we had this just like hour-long conversation of stuff, and it was super meaningful. And so, and his passing like really genuinely like just like hurt me to the core, and like here's like this like white man who like I don't know what it was, but just the magic of him, just like, like even the Bourdain episode, like I've only seen it twice, right? I saw it the day it aired, and then I just saw it once with like my daughter just to like watch it. And that was it. Like I've only seen it twice. Just mostly because it makes me sad.
Yeah, I bet.
So yeah, but it's been great. It's been great to sort of see the love that the community gets. And I think for me, the Bridge Runners has always just been about creating a space without like, like without judgment, right? Like creating a space where anybody feels included to come and run, and we've had moments to like that were, unique. Coca-Cola approached us to do a commercial early on.
We're relaunching the Cove Collective Book Club in March 2022. It'll be a membership-based virtual book club for women of color where we'll have seasonal meetups, digital book discussion guides, author Q&As, downloadable resources, and much, much more. Pay $49 per quarter every 3 months or $149 when you pay for the year up front. Head to our website, covecollective.ca, to sign up for the waitlist.
And they're like, hey, we want you guys to, this and that, and we'll pay you. And I was just like, there's no way we're going to do a commercial for the biggest peddler,
Right.
sugared water. And, and I drink Coke. Like, I drink Coke all the time, but like my personal views and all on it are not ones that I would like illustrate, and I think one of the things that we've done is like say no more than we do say yes to certain things and certain collaborations, and all of the ones that have come in have really been just because of like friends, right? I've known Lisa Ling for 10 years, and she's like a phenomenal friend and somebody who's just like just as real as it gets. And our feature in her show Takeout was just really like by chance. I saw she gets this show on HBO, and I texted her. I was just like, hey, by the way, you should check out Otami-san and Boyle Heights. It's the last standing Japanese restaurant in the community. And this kicks it off, right? Like, she's like, well, what does that mean? Like, what do you mean last Japanese restaurant? Was there like a Japanese community? And she's like, suddenly understands this history of the city, that often historically never gets told, right? And suddenly she finds these rich layers of like the community and highlights beautiful places like not only Otami-san, but Islos Masubi, who's been really getting a lot of great shine because of the episode, and just highlighting the community and the richness of Los Angeles, right? Here you have this Japanese American community that has made a huge impact in the city, but often doesn't get celebrated. And for me, it's just like, I love to just like, I like to connect, right? Like connect those pieces, and then it goes to show you how the universe works. Helen Cho, who was one of the staff members that worked with Anthony Bourdain's show, is the executive producer of Lisa's show, and we were able to reconnect and seeing her and seeing this woman get this opportunity to highlight these stories, especially for our Asian brothers and sisters who have found themselves being the victims of violence because of, again, just sort of evil that has been put out into the world, right? And misinformation, and so like very few things get me heated, right? Except when like you see like bullying type tendencies, right? Like that's when I'm just like and so to see like our elders in our community, and I say our elders because like elders belong to all of us, that knowledge belongs to all of us, and so to just, be able to connect and highlight the beauty of the Asian American community, and its ties to Boyle Heights. I was glad to sort of see it, and to see the Asian American community celebrated in this light was positive for me. And I didn't need to be front and center. Like hey, this is a spot, and allow the story to be told.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love that they came out around this, like almost the same time. So you can, I'll definitely have a link to the Anthony Bourdain episode as well. But if you watch these 2 episodes, it gives you a nice rounded story about Boyle Heights, because especially with the shows that have been out, you're just like Latino, Latino, Latino. But if you go back and then you find out that there used to be, the big Japanese community, the history of that and how that was incorporated into the fabric of the community and stuff like that. I just love what Lisa is doing, what Roy is doing, giving us the unheard stories of these areas that people for a long time have always tried to erase, and people, we're over it, right? We're done with it, and it's time for us to tell our own stories, to also I love that you knew that history. You're not Japanese, but you knew it, and you're just like, hey, the last standing And then she was like, well, what do you mean? And then you're just like, well, da 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 da. And it's we can come together and shed light on, just because it is part of the community. And I feel like that's very, very important. So where do you think your sense of understanding the importance of community organizing comes from?
There's a term called YA baby, right? Which is like in reference to kids that grow up in the juvenile system, right? Like and so often to imply that this kid was raised by the system and not necessarily family. And I always kind of think of it like I was raised by nonprofits in many ways, right? Like I'm a latchkey child. So like, I would come home and often it would be like nobody home. And so it's easy to kind of get caught up in stuff. And the way I describe it, I was never from a gang, none of those things, but like all of my close childhood friends were, right? And so I know the ingredients that go into it and to go into making it. And I just try to enter the spaces like authentically myself. But I always found myself at the various like nonprofits, and early on, I was fortunate enough to be a part of like seeing Homeboy Industries grow in the community, because all of my friends were from the projects, even though I wasn't from the projects. And so, by chance, one summer, one of my friends was like, hey, let's go to this office. Maybe, Father Greg will give us a summer job. And I meet this like, interesting man who I'd never met, but had heard of, for a long time, just kind of growing up in the community. And it was interesting seeing sort of Homeboy Industries at the early onset, because this is when the organization was not the darling of the city at the time. I remember some of my friends would check voicemails and people would leave like hate mail, right? Like, I'm never going to buy your wetback bread, da da da, and they would just hang it up, right? And like, it never cut any of us deep, right? Like, it was just like, all right, well, they didn't leave a callback number. So, and that was just a sense of humor that was developed there. And so I think for me, just to be around this bold visionary really was transformative for me. And I think he was also kind of slightly intrigued by me, because he was like, how does this dude know all of these gangsters, but isn't from any neighborhood,
Yeah.
And so, I think that environment really just kind of like fostered what it was to be a true radical, what it is to be, what love is to be for your city, for your fellow person. And then like that just kind of takes you down that rabbit's hole, right? Like people give you like the right books. And this is kind of one of the reasons why I have such, Elisa, is like a big sister to me, and, and was one of the very first people I'd known Elisa since I was like 17 years old.
Wow.
And so Lady and Mish just kind of would be like, oh, you should read this, read that. And those, and books are super transformational on that level. And so I think a lot of it for me is, is like just being granted like access to the books that you would not read in school, right? Like, because, very few teachers always like saying like, hey, check out the, autobiography of Malcolm X. Hey, check out, the history of this. And so like, these books start to like play like fundamental, laid the foundation for like, my views of the world moving forward. And I found myself really fortunate. I learned significant things about social justice through like Father Greg, found myself, working in Skid Row for, almost 7 years. And just really like getting to understand like not only homelessness and the challenges behind it, mental illness, but also just love for your fellow brothers and sisters. Most of my clients at the time were Black. And, and folks would just often sort of say like, like one, especially for somebody that's coming out of incarceration, you have to kind of fall in line along racial lines. And, and I could tell like they would often look at me and they're like, well, what the hell are you, man? Like, because I'd be like, well, I'm Mexican. And they're like, oh. And I was like, but then you start to treat people like people and with this level of respect. I worked for a long time in Skid Row and I never got burned out. And people often would ask me like, well, what is it? And I would say one is just like, I try to treat people the way I would want to be treated. Mm-hmm. If I lost it, right? Find myself in that space, I would want somebody to just be open, warm, real with me, right? Because like I would find myself hearing stories, and I would tell people, look, if I had keys to put you up in an apartment, I would do it. But there's all these layers and these things that we need to navigate. And it just made me fall in love more with the city because I was, I viewed it like anybody that walked in through the doors is continuing to fight for themselves. And I'm going to be what I need to be, whether it's a cheerleader or a coach. Because sometimes people need just the coaching or the cheerleading, right? Like, you got this, don't worry about this, and so, like, the issues around the unhoused is something that I just genuinely care about, because what drives me up the wall is, like, the city has experienced the greatest level of wealth it has ever experienced historically, but it's also experiencing the greatest amount of homelessness it has ever experienced. The African-American population in Los Angeles is one of the smaller populations in the city, but it is the highest experiencing homelessness. What does that say about us as a city, our moral fabric, that we are not willing to fight for our brothers and sisters that where we can suddenly find ourselves in,
Yep.
And so, it's things that I've cared about. I often tell people, I feel like my life is a little bit like the Mexican Forrest Gump. I find myself in these unique positions, and to be enlightened by certain folks that have, the streets have been my greatest teacher, and folks experiencing homelessness have been incredibly transformational for me to just to navigate and fight for the underserved.
That's amazing, because you've been working in those spaces for such a long time, and you haven't gotten burnt out. I feel like that, I don't know if I'm correct, but from what I heard and friends that work in that space, burnout is, kind of just par for the course. You know what I'm saying? And I was wondering, do you think, because you said something like it takes a lot for you to get upset, but when you see bullying, and I've said this many times, especially on here, I'm not an only child, but I was an only child for a long time. You know what I'm saying? There's a big age gap, and it's another dad. It's a whole situation. And so I feel the same way, but also, do you think that you got that innate sense of community and community building because you were an only child, because you kind of had to seek it out, being that, we were I'm sure I'm significantly older than you, but age bracket where you said latchkey kid, that means we're kind of in the same vein. Do you think that has anything to do with that?
I think a lot of it is, so one is people always sort of say oh, as an only child, you must have been very lonely. Right. And I was like, no, I've
Exactly.
never felt that way. To kind of bring it back to the Otami-san, I grew up literally right around the corner from that restaurant. Right. And my first childhood friend is still the homie. Right. And, and he and I have charted two completely different paths in life. I still got endless love for him. Right. And he's got endless love for me. And so I think that sense of, seeking it, I think a part of it is also is rooted in, I just care, right? The city, has shown love to me. The people of the city have shown love to me, and I want to pay it forward. The sense of bullying is just it just always has rubbed me the wrong way. One of my clearest memories is just, I remember this kid who clearly spoke Spanish, and was reading something, and this one clown wanted to make fun of him because of his accent, right? And there's something in me kind of almost with the Hulk, right? When he gets mad, he rages up, and it's sort of the same level, where I remember just started clowning this dude, and I was all and I start clapping back at homeboy, and it's not the other kid was my homie, we grew up together. I just that just is it kicks that switch in for me. And it's always been the case. And, kind of people ask like, oh, it must have been really cool to meet Bourdain and all of that stuff. And it for sure was. But I think one of the coolest outcomes of it was I was in Little Tokyo, which is like my other, like if I don't rep Boyle Heights hard enough, it's like I rep Little Tokyo. But I was there at homie's location at Café Dulce, and and I run into this dude, and he's like, hey man, were you on that show? And I was like, yeah, kind of the usual like pleasantries, right? He goes, he's like, you and I went to high school together. And I was like, oh, for reals? I was like, man, like, I can't say that I remember, like I had hair then, like all of these things. And he's like, no, he goes, our interaction wasn't a positive one. And then like in my head, like, if you're a kid from the hood, you automatically think like, oh man, like I probably had beef with this kid. We probably squabbled, whatever.
Are we about to square up right now?
Yeah. I was just like, man, like, and, but he was like, no, he goes, we were watching something and there was a scene of two men kissing. And he's like, and I said something, really, really, what did he say? Something. He's like, I just said something really ignorant. And he's like, and you turned around and you go, what's wrong with somebody being gay?
No.
And he's just like, and I remember just like, I just shut down and I just like stood quiet and you just kind of kept pushing. I do not remember that moment, right? Like, I don't remember that story. It wasn't anything like, it wasn't like this like moment that like was etched in my memory, but it was clearly etched in this dude's memory, right? And then it like reemerges when he suddenly sees, this episode. And so I just felt, so like moments like that I thought were really positive and really unique. And some of the really, moments that I just love to kind of like think about.
I love that. Love that so much. Okay, so let's get into the section we like to call the not so rapid fire questions, the AKA
I love this one.
Slow as hell questions. So you're familiar, but I have a couple little extras thrown in by a little someone. Oh, no. I'm getting ahead of myself. What am I doing? Let's go to questions and comments from the audience. Real quick. I can't skip that. What am I doing?
It's your show. You can do whatever you want.
Okay. So also, let me preface this by saying, your name is Rolando. I feel I don't know you and I haven't earned the right to call you Rolly. So that is why I have started that's just going to preface that. Okay.
You're more than welcome to call me Rolly, by the way.
Thank you. So let me read these beautiful words that I got from somebody. It says, Rolly has been a community leader, brother, comrade for several years now. I like to think of him as an unofficial Boyle Heights ambassador. He has a confidence, just and loving leadership style. He is patient and nurturing of new runners, and he's just down to earth, smart, and kind. We used to run together before any of us had our kids, and as we get older and we both parent, navigate everything along with that, I appreciate him even more. He's just the kind of person you want in your life. I'm so happy you're talking to him on your show. And that is by Jolene. Is I saying her?
Yeah, Jolene. Yeah.
Jolene. Yes.
Love her. Yeah. Jolene is by far just one of the most authentic and genuine souls that I know. And again, as somebody that is championing for everybody in the city and a true, just genuine person who I've been really lucky to connect with. And, I think for a lot of us, people view radicals as not people that are just kind of these grumpy folks. And it's just like, Jolene is one of those people that I can laugh with and nerd out with about comic books and true love of social justice.
Love that so much. Thank you so much, Jolene, for the question, because I don't know her. And I just was like, I just saw an interaction with you guys on Twitter or something like that. And then I was like, let me follow her. Let me reach out to her on Instagram and DM her, and so I was just like, hey, my name's this. I want to, And she came back and she's like, oh, I listened to your show. And I was like, oh my God, thank you so much. And the kind words. And I was like, of course. Like I was like, I don't know her, but I feel like they're really close. And then boom, I was not wrong. Okay. Yeah. So let's get into the not so rapid fire questions, the aka slow as hell questions that you know of, and then I have some other ones. And when I ask those, I'll reveal who helped me out. Okay,
Yeah.
the first one. 3 words to describe yourself.
Oh, that's I would just say, for sure, just radical, funny. I think I tend to just make people laugh. And the last one is just a dad, like I think being a dad is the title that I care about the most.
Oh, that's amazing. When I never thought I'd be a mom, and then I became one, and it's the best thing, I think,
Right.
one of the best things. And I have reclaimed, you're such a mom. And Ike,
Right.
what about it? It's dope.
Yeah.
It's one of the dopest jobs, the hardest jobs. I don't know what are you trying to say? That's not a diss. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like,
No,
oh, you're such a
absolutely.
mom. And well, cool. Then
Yeah, I am.
success. You know what I'm saying? Okay. The second one. What's the best piece of advice you've received?
Oh, I think there one is just like kind of like the words that I live by. It's just like, is that, if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready.
Please believe it.
And, and it's a term that I heard a lot from folks that have been incarcerated. And, and I think a lot of it is just sometimes like, to your point, like reclaiming that and flipping that, right? Like if we stay ready, we don't have to get ready. And that just means on all fronts, right? Like, parenthood, life, social justice, the way we navigate in spaces, like, and that's kind of something that has been always incredibly close to my heart. It's just like, if we stay ready, we don't have to get ready. And so it's like, whatever it may be, like, if you want to talk about, parenting, life, love, this community, all of this, like, let's go,
Yeah.
and I attribute that quote to just like all of the homies that I just grew up with that just like, bestowed this knowledge onto me.
Love it. Yeah. Remember that, kids, because it's it's in all facets of life, like he said, right? It could be your job. It could be anywhere. Those are the types of things I'm trying to teach the supernatural bear. It's how I think we've had this discussion many times, and we continue to have discussion. How do you teach your child street smarts when they're not in the same situations that you were in? Do you know what I'm saying? Like some of the things I'm like, oh, that's my superpower. No, that's childhood trauma.
Yeah,
That's
right.
PTSD. Do you know what I mean? And because I'm like, come on, supernatural, be aware of your surroundings.
Yeah.
Whether it's here at the house, be aware of your surroundings, because if mom and papa bear are talking, then that's maybe not the time to interrupt, right? It's like that type of situation. But when you're out in the streets, mijo, like when you're out in the streets, I was like, how many times did we almost get in a car crash? But we didn't, because I was aware of my surroundings and I didn't go. And he's like, you're right. And I was like, it's hard to teach that. But, I was like, your papa bear and I had to learn it because of survival. And we're excited and happy that you don't have to do that, but we still want you to learn it.
Yeah. I think that to me has been the biggest thing that is always a front of mind, especially raising a daughter, right? And I've taught my daughter just like everything from like nuances to like keeping your hands up, like my daughter knows how to throw a punch and kick.
Nice.
And but even like her school has been really phenomenal, where like she, one day she came home and she was just saying like, my body, my own, right?
Love it.
And so like these little things that like I think are really, really, really vital. I know I will not be around forever, but I want her to be able to just like have and enter those spaces with that, like that ability to just like, hey, whatever, whenever, like I am ready.
Exactly.
I'm down. And, I used to go to this gym called The Yard, and, my head coach was Mark Komuro, an older Japanese cat from Boyle Heights. And he would often ask me to help like with when, women would come to the gym, and he would really just use me as like a human punching bag. And it was just because some of the girls would punch at the gloves as opposed to the face. And he would always say, like, don't worry, if you hit him, you're not going to break him. And it was just like changing, that person, a young woman's mind about like, all right, I can hit this dude. And like, because often what are we told? Like, girls don't fight, act like a proper lady, all of these terminologies that we impose on women. And here, this older Japanese dude was like breaking all of those, like, stigmas and saying like, nah, you could crack this dude. And I love that gym, the first place that like I literally had my mouthpiece knocked out of my mouth was by a young woman, and so I think for me, it's just like wanting to just like impose those like things for my daughter, just, hey, you can do all of those things, but you can also just kick and punch if need be.
I love that. It's like teaching young girls to have agency, because we didn't have that growing up. You're right. Okay, so the next one, I'm gonna change this up. Usually I ask what song is your hype song, right? But I have a remix of it from Lady Emish and Lisa. If you could only run to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, so I will say one is like growing up in LA, like, love dilated peoples, like love just, just anybody that champions the city of LA. I was always been a big fan of. And, but I also like, the goon in me loves like Cameron and the Diplomats. And they have a song called I'm Ready. And it's like this, like, it's not the most traditional running song, right? It's not like dum dum, like it's just like, like the slow build up, and like the hook is like I'm ready. And it's just like I found myself running to a lot of like just like random like Cameron and Diplomats, just because like one, I just find them hilarious. Like just like God, these guys are just like so funny. And I think that's so much I don't know if you saw the like verses between like the lock.
Did I see it? We're outside, of course.
And like to me, like watching that, like it was just watching like Black Joy, right? Like these grown men were just like having like it was the equivalent of watching kids in the playground, right? And the playground was hip hop right there, and you mentioned earlier, like kind of like these things that are transformational, but like hip hop for me was like where I found like a home in some regards and some art. And I'm going to be 40 this year. I still listen to rap music. It still inspires me. It still makes me happy. It still gives me a sense of like culture and community. And some of my best friends, like our bond was over, rap music. One of my best friends, James Clark, who's from South Central, like our first conversation was like, what are you listening to? And and our friendship has been 20 years now. Right. And so it's just like, so I think, I'm a sucker for just some Cameron and some Diplomats, Heat Makers, all of that stuff. Yeah. Love it.
That's amazing. Hip hop, I say it all the time. Hip hop saved my life. Music saved my life, but hip hop saved my life. And it's funny that you say the Diplomats, because another question that Lady Emish put together says, Diplomats or Wu-Tang?
Oh, Wu-Tang, mostly because as like a kid that's like a bastard, right? And I embrace the title. Like I just like, hearing Method Man describe like, well, why do you call ODB the old dirty bastard? And him saying, because there's no father to his style. And like, for me as a kid that grew up without a dad, right? Like when I heard that, like, it was just like, I equated to the way, like when people talk about when they heard the gospel, right? Like hearing that, I was just like, wait, I don't need a dad to like define me or like create like this. I was just like, I can just be like, and so like this term of like, there's no father to a style, like, like I grew up in this neighborhood. I don't sound like the dudes like that historically people think of that grew up in this neighborhood. Like I've listened to music that doesn't historically get played throughout the neighborhood. And so like Wu-Tang like was just like, crazy, influential to me. I got to meet, I've had the chance to meet both like the RZA and Ghostface, and they always kind of say, right, you don't ever want to meet your idols.
Yeah.
They were so dope, you know,
So
and
good.
Ghost, like, I will always remember he was like, where can I get a good turkey burger? And I was so stumped, and I'm like in my head trying to think of like where you could get a good turkey burger. Just so genuine and so like, you know, sweet. But yeah, like the Wu-Tang was just like, you know, like besides the music being just like so innovative and brilliant, you know, like these little nuggets just like are things that have made a lasting impression for me.
Yeah, hip hop, man.
Love
Never,
it.
not fair where the fans here. My
No,
whole life is informed by hip hop. I mean, you know, the Supernatural Bears known all kinds of shit, and
yeah,
when he'll things will come on and he'll say the things, and then I look at Rock, I go, my job here is done. Like
yeah.
he's quoting, you know, such and such, you know, at the appropriate time in the appropriate context. My job is done. Okay, last question. What will be your legacy?
I think my daughter, you
Mm,
know, like I think, you know, I think of everything is like, you know, you not to just like piggyback off of like the Super Bowl, but everything is marching forward, right? Like,
mm.
you know, like my wife often likes to remind me, she's like, I don't know how you're alive still, right? Just because like, you know, you just kind of like, you grow up in these circumstances, all of these things, right? Like statistically speaking, I should not be here with you right now, right? Like just, you know,
Rolando,
but I'm
I
here,
say that shit all the time.
right?
Statistically, we should not be here. I should not be here, or I should be
Yep.
incarcerated, or I should be a drug, like all the
Right.
shit, right?
Yeah.
Please
Yeah.
believe
I
it.
should be writing you a letter from prison while like, you know,
That shit.
yeah, all of that. And so like that doesn't kind of like doesn't escape me. And so it's like, I think, you know, my mom handed me the baton to like push the bar further. Um, you know, and as somebody in social justice, like I am a big proponent of like, it's not about you, right? Like if you're doing social justice to be like, oh, I helped so and so, and
Look at
then
me. Yeah.
oh, you're doing it all wrong, you know. And I often will tell, you know, because people would tell me like, Rolando, you know, I appreciate this, I thank you, da da da. I say, look, all I want you to remember is like, man, at some point in the downest moment in my life, the skinny Mexican dude helped me out. That's it. Cool. Like my job is done. And I think for me, it's just like I'm excited to sort of see, you know, what my daughter does with this world and with the
Mm,
space, right? Like how she moves
mm,
it forward. And so, you know, I think my legacy will manifest itself through her in
yeah.
whichever way. And you know, and if at the end of the day she's like, man, my dad was great, he was hilarious, my job is done. That's the only legacy I care about, right? Like
Yeah.
um I've been fortunate to be friends and hang out in spaces and have a cool and eccentric life. But really the only thing I care about is how the eyes that my daughter looks at me through.
Ah, the best.
Yeah.
The best. Rolando, I still don't feel comfortable calling you Rolly. I feel like I haven't earned it. So until I feel I've earned it, I will do that. But until then, Rolando, muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much for doing what you do for the community, for being a real one, for being an amazing dad, and for being, you know, having this convo with me. I mean, I truly appreciate it. And everyone go check out all the links and support him and oh, one last question.
Yeah.
Because of I forgot to ask, because of the fame of the Boyle Heights Bridge Runners, is everyone like trying to join? Like, is everyone's like trying to be down? Like, what is that?
Yeah, no, I would say, you know, I think one is right. Like it's hard to be down because every car you just still get up and run 3 miles, you know? So like, that's just like, you know, like automatically is going to be like a challenge. But I will say one of the coolest things to kind of emerge from it is, especially speaking of Roy, was like, he hosted this great picnic with a bunch of us at Elysian Park. Everybody came out, right? Like, you know, all these folks of color, just like an amazing community. But I ran into Spanto from Born and Raised, and I had been a fan of the work that they had been doing, and I genuinely believed, like, you should give people their roses while they're here, right?
Yeah.
Like give like people that love, And I just told homeboy, I was like, hey man, I just want to say props to you for what you've been doing. And he was all like, he's like, oh, I appreciate it. He's like, where are you from? Right. And like that the famous question. And I was like, I'm from Boyle Heights. And I'll rep it to like, I could be with aliens. And if they say, where are you from? Like, I'm not going to say Earth. I'm from Boyle Heights. And he's like, oh, he's like, no doubt. And he's like, we just started chopping it up about love, about LA, the city, all of this stuff. And, and it sparked a really great friendship. And I think, I hope to be able to do stuff with those guys and, and highlight what we're putting together. And I think the beauty of a lot of those things has just been finding other people that love the city as much as we do. There's a lot that the city is going through that is super, that's meant to break the spirit. But I think like even moments like you, right? Like hanging out with you, Ritzy, like we have been in the same universe, but never connected, right? And suddenly the cosmic gods have brought us here together. And I think that, you have been able to use a great platform to give voice to stories that are often unheard.
Thank you.
Awesome. You're doing it ahead of the curve, right? And like you're doing it, marketing firms are spending millions of dollars to kind of understand stories. You're doing it organically. And I think that those are the beauty of all of those things that I would think have transpired. And I think the more we're able to connect us after being socially distanced and without community, to find it in these spaces has been great. And I appreciate your platform because you've interviewed so many of people that I admire. I'm a friend of, love, and just like, or even that I don't know of that I'm just like, I get to rediscover, and I think that's great because we need more of that in this world.
Thank you so much, Rolando. I loved hearing that. I appreciate it because sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? But because I love doing it. But when I hear that other people are listening at all, like, do you know what I mean? It means the most to me, and especially people I admire and respect, such as yourself. So muchísimas gracias. I really appreciate it. And then whenever you want to come on to talk about anything else, it's open for whatever, whenever.
Yeah. Well, like you said, you have a friend in me for life. Whatever you need, whenever, whatever, I got you.
Vice versa. Gracias.
Appreciate you.
And now, introducing
the Supernatural Bear Corner. Supernatural Bear. Hello, everyone. It is SNB, the Supernatural Bear from the SNB Corner, and today we're going to be talking about Mr. Rolando. Sorry, I'm talking very fast today. He was on the show called Broken Bread. It's hosted by my uncle Roy Choi, who may or may not has been on the show. I don't remember. It's been over a year. So, yeah, but he'll be hopefully on a future episode. But getting back to Rolando, he is an activist and a community organizer who does everything in his power to help people who don't feel safe and, give them like a home to live in and stuff. So, yeah, I think he's a really cool guy. And yeah, this has been the SMB Corner. Shout out to Rolando! Yeah!
Shooby-doos. Yeah. There it is. Episode 68 of Word to Your Mama with Rolando. I don't do it as well as a Supernatural Bear, apparently. But Rolando Cruz. One day I'll feel comfortable, maybe, doing the Rolly. But he's amazing, right? Amazing. You just feel the goodness, the realness, oozing out via the sound waves. And I'm glad. I love connecting with good people. Good people know good people. So let's keep it moving. And the Supernatural Bear breaking it down with his R pronunciation. I love it. Maybe Spanish stuff is paying off a little bit. Again, thank you so much for all your support. That you can tell your folks, tell your peeps, tell your friends. You can donate. You can go to the store, buy a couple of things. You can become a patron on Patreon, and you can also buy us a whiskey via Buy Me a Coffee. All these links are in your show notes. Everything we talked about with Rolando are in the show notes. And don't forget, on Spotify via Ritzy P, there is a Word to Your Mama guest hype song playlist. So all the songs since September of 2020 that every guest on here has mentioned as their hype song has been added to that playlist, and it's pretty dope. I mean, it runs the gamut, like all kinds of things. So don't forget about that. And yeah, I'm excited for what's to come and for the rest of the 2022s. And yeah, as always, we reap. Word to Your Mama is owned and produced by Ritzy P. Intro beat produced by Nico Beats. If you want to know anything about Word to Your Mama, including Media Kit, go to wordtoyourmama.com. And as always, Word to Your Mama is brought to you by ritzyperiwinkle.com.